Welcome back to this month's Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters, foremost experts in technology, marketing, brokerage, government, policy, capital, construction, and cybersecurity. As always, it's a three-part show. Part one, introductions, what's new for each Roundtable host in their business sector. Part two, we unpack, drill down, what are the biggest news, biggest shifts in the industry? And part three, what does this mean for you? What does it mean for your business? How to outpace your competition? I'm Andreas Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, and commercial director here at KW, and technology growth strategist for both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. And joining me this month is none other than Rebecca Carlson, founder, CEO, Carlson Integrated, past president at Nightcar, brokerage owner, Chicagoland native. Also joining, none other than Dan Wagner, SVP, Government Relations, the Inland Real Estate Group of Companies.
Hey, everybody.
Chris Abel, our Membership Director at Associated Builders and Contractors, all things building, as well as board member at SMPS, Society for Marketing Professional Services. And joining a bit late, Saul Klein, CEO, San Diego MLS, Realtor Emeritus. But before we get started into our regular show, I do want to take a moment of silence in memoriam of two incredibly important people near and dear to this group and to the industry itself, none other than Daniel Goodwin, founder at Inland, and Reiko Mendoza, sister of Regan Mendoza, our show producer. So thank you. For those that don't know, and I'm sure Dan will say a few words about Dan Goodwin, founder at Inland, and Regan, if you want to jump on and say a few words about your sister, you're more than welcome. Dan Goodwin was a guiding light for the industry in many ways. Dan, I'll let you jump in and do that.
Oh my gosh, it is. It's been. It's one of the hardest things we've had to go through. Obviously, as a company, but personally, he was my second dad, so that's been pretty intense. But I want to tell you what an honor it is to have someone who, like Dan Goodwin, to be under his tutelage for 20 years. It was like being at grad school every day. He believed in the Socratic form of learning. You either know it or you don't. But just a heart full of gold and wonderful things. And in the industry, it's been pretty interesting. His grandmother was homeless. He grew up in an apartment with his two brothers and pull-out couches. He had a toilet and a wash tub, and just comes from nothing. Was a Chicago public school teacher, got other Chicago public school teachers eventually to start giving him money, and they invested in real estate. 3 other teachers joined him, and they created Inland 57 years ago. And we just recently purchased, I believe, our 54th or 55th billionth piece of real estate in America, all states except Alaska. So, the ethics is the key to all this. And that also led to a lot of innovations. When the tax laws changed in the 80s, what happened is a variety of their deals, some of them were underwater because of that, because they did limited partnerships. And so they said they wouldn't allow anybody to lose their money with Inland. And they put all their money back in the company, and they went to Walmart. They asked Walmart if they could do sale leasebacks. Walmart never did that before, but they said, yeah, we'll do it with you guys. They became the largest landlord of Walmart. At the same time, they went to Treasury and they said, hey, can we 1031 exchange these underwater investors into a fractional share interest of these Walmarts? And they said, no one's ever done that before. You're going to take the bad stuff and you're going to give them the good stuff? Fine with us. And so he created the fractional share interest of doing the 1031, and it just exploded into the real estate world, so much so that he actually created the Delaware Statutory Trust that we all know today. And those are major wonderful drivers of wealth in America. And he is one of the leaders that was able to help create different, the Institute for Portfolio Alternatives. Inland was involved with helping create a DISA. He's super involved with the National Association of Realtors, where he is one of the largest private commercial real estate companies. And he's in the Hall of Fame for RPAC at the national level, at the state level, at the local level. I mean, just across the board, just so many things. But ultimately, his heart was always for helping people, and he created New Directions, which is for affordable housing. He believed where you're raised helps determine your success, and so he has about $100 million worth of affordable working poor apartments in the Chicagoland area, and just a million more stories I could tell you, but it is so amazing to be able to take time, and I appreciate you, Andreas, and everybody on the call. I've told everybody, I've sobbed. I started sobbing like 3 times a day, then 2 times a day, then 1 time a day, and I think today was the first day I didn't sob. So it just shows you the passion and the love you have for somebody brings out those emotional feelings, and I'm just so honored to share about Mr. Goodwin with all of you, and you're part of obviously my family working together all these many months. So I appreciate taking the time to honor Mr. Goodwin.
And Mr. Goodwin lives on in England, and
He
will
does.
continue to. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
He does.
Mr. Mendoza, our producer, has passed on saying a few words, but with that, let's go into our show. And to my right, Becca, you are first and foremost for the first time. What is going on in your side of the industry, and what's changed?
Well, we've launched at the beginning of the year with a ton of planning and a ton of preparation, and it seems like we are suddenly catapulted into convention season. And I say that because I've got numerous clients that are starting to plan their booths and presence at the ICSC Las Vegas conference already. And we're exploring all sorts of conferences all over the country that many of our clients are attending. It's very exciting to see travel back and in-person conferences as a very regular part of business development. It sounds funny, but for several years there it wasn't, and it's kind of crept up a little bit. But what I'm seeing is even my online networking groups are transitioning to in-person. Everyone's back, shaking hands, looking people in the eye, getting to know their potential business referral sources and partners, and building business in that traditional way. It's been very exciting to be a part of all of these conversations.
Convention season is coming. Oh boy. May is right around the corner. Your luncheon every year at ICSC Vegas is coming. Wow. Okay. And as far as Mr. Saul Klein over there, now the San Diego MLS president, are you going to throw more conventions for the MLS? What's your next move?
So I'm not the president anymore. I'm the CEO.
I knew you were going to correct me. I wanted to give you the opportunity.
Okay, right. So, no, it's interesting. We just had a conversation about this today. We had a board of directors meeting, and we were talking about budget, and we were talking about travel and events and why we send people to events. And one of the great benefits to the events that we see in my side of the real estate world, the Realtor and the MLS world, is it's a great opportunity for people to train, to learn. And so you want to get a new staff person immersed in what it's like in the industry. You send them to a California Association of Realtors meeting or a National Association of Realtors meeting, and you let them go to some committee meetings, and all of a sudden they understand the process and how the work gets done and the valuable work that gets done. And so, Becca, I'm with you. I know I traveled for many, many years, like 30 years, to so many events. And part of the fun of it is there's some people you only knew them at events, right? You'd see old friends that you only saw when you went to certain events, and they were great business contacts and referral contacts, but you only saw them in person when you went to an event. So events were these great networking opportunities. And COVID did kind of stop all that. And for me, my career kind of slowed down at that point anyway. And so I stopped traveling, and so did everybody else. And now everybody else is traveling again. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of used to this not traveling thing. And they asked me today at a board of directors meeting, What are we going to do with the budget? And you're going to travel. And I said, I don't need to travel anymore. I've been to all these events. I've met all the people that I really need to meet. And we need to send other people out to these events. We need to take some of our staff people and some of our new directors, and we need to put them on the road. And the hardest part of events is getting there, right? And getting home. The travel's the worst part. Once you're there, it's great. Matter of fact, sometimes you think, geez, we're already in day 2 or day 3, and it's going to be over before you know it. And I won't come back for a year to this particular event. So no, I get it. We're sending, like I said, sending staff and sending new directors, and I have to go to a couple different ones just because I do. And but I'm not going to be on the road like I used to be on the road, but I encourage everybody that wants to do it to take advantage of it, because it's a great learning experience, great chance to see how things work. And it's got me excited. Maybe I'll go. No, actually, I got to leave town next week. I got to go to the CAR meetings up in Monterey.
Well, and Paris was fun. So you do like to travel when it's the right place to go.
But that conference is scheduled for next year as well. It's going to be in Milan.
Oh, now I just think you're teasing people to go based on location.
And then it's going to be Toronto the next year. So they're already planning out, that's the thing about these events. You have to plan in advance, way in advance, right? So you get the hotel and you get the facilities, and it's a big deal.
Well, so as people head back to head out to conference season, in line with return to office, is this going to be an ongoing thread? Are we back at the office full time? New York's leading the way, but I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Chris, if New York's leading the way and we're headed back into the office, we're going to need some construction. How are things going on your side of the industry?
I mean, things are going well. Everyone seems really busy. Just to kind of piggyback a little bit, membership. I mean, I can't blink without someone inquiring about membership right now, which is a great place to be. Anyone that I'm having these meetings with, again, in person, hey, have you ever met so-and-so? Like the potential member stuff is just flying in. And I know that just doesn't go for my chapter at ABC. I know I spoke to a couple other membership directors within ABC, plus other people within some of the chambers, within some of the other trade associations that are out there. And I think everyone kind of has this feeling of, okay, 7, 8 months ago, we heard about the economy and we heard all these different things. COVID, obviously, I completely agree. I remember a year and a half ago, people were still questioning. 2 years ago, people were still questioning if we're going to continue shaking hands or if that was a thing of the past. It's obviously not a thing of the past. And it just seems like everyone is kind of like, all right, I got to get in front of people. I got to get out there. What's going to get me there? What I found interesting is even at the local event level, because conference season is definitely coming along. I'm definitely going to more than I usually go to. But this is interesting. The other day I put up 2 events for my association, decided to do the registration a little different, and I forgot to set it so every time someone registered, I would get an email. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, you know what? This is just a slow registration or whatever the case is. So I went back into the back end of the platform thinking, I'm going to have to push this. I'm going to have to start pushing events. And within 2 days, we had, 16 or 17 on one, and I think about 22 register for another. So it used to be kind of this promote, ask, tell them to come, ask, tell them to come, this, that, and the other thing. Now, Andreas, you've been to a couple of our events. You know they're large events, but there's always a lot of work in the push and the drive to drive those numbers up. It was kind of a breath of fresh air to kind of look in the back end and be like, oh my God, this is, one of those events is almost half full, and we're almost still a full month away. So it's exciting. People are definitely out there. People, GCs and CMs, actually a lot more GCs and CMs this year, coming and asking about membership, where the past couple of years it seems to be more specialty contractors, which seems like more GCs and CMs are bouncing back into some of these places, because I just feel like they realize they need to be in front of people and start just start building the backlog again that they were so concerned with a couple of years ago.
Well, and it's interesting. We're seeing the same, right? It's not as much work to fill the room. People want to get back together. I blame AI and all the fake chatbots out there. People want to know that they're real when they're communicating. So no better way to do that than at an event. But back to an earlier point, I think it also lends itself back to mentorship. People are looking for that way to learn, that way to be educated. And the best way to do that is to learn from your peers at these events, at these shows, things like this. I mean, Inland's at, I can't count how many events, Nightcar and so on, right? You guys aren't slowing down because AI exists and marketing exists, right? You're still at events, presumably.
Well, yeah, I will tell you, I was at the American Farm Bureau convention in Salt Lake City, and was there talking about educating farmers about the DST, which is very interesting because if you talk to a farmer, you can't just say, "Hey, you want to sell your farm?" because they want to punch you. No farmer wants to sell their farm. What they want to do is you highlight if you're looking for the idea for a passive investment where you can retire someday. Let me talk to you about that, and then they're more open to discussing. But I'd say about 5% of farmers I talk to are very interested in learning about the DST. But we were in Salt Lake City, and then from Salt Lake City, I had to get on a plane and fly directly to Washington D.C. because the Real Estate Roundtable had their convention, which I can talk about a little bit later. And then on Monday, flying to California. I'll be going to Newport Beach for the Institute for Portfolio Alternatives for their convention. And it's like, boom, 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 here we go. And I tell you what, the office people are really excited about people going back to work, and the owners of REITs that have office space, it's a big deal. We are excited about that. And that's something that we're trying to really promote. And I do also I can't wait to hear from Saul in regards to some of the NAR stuff and what he knows. I know that there was at Inman, there was a discussion about competition for NAR, and as a leader of the MLSs, be interesting to see what your take is on all the controversy surrounding and swirling about that for our listeners, Saul.
Oh boy, Saul, I've got a shout out to Chicago's market, the office market specifically, before Saul jumps in. Largest sales volume in the Midwest in 2023. 1.14 billion in office sales. For what it's worth. Saul, to you.
Yes, well, let me address. I think there's a lot of distressed properties coming on, and that we're looking at a huge retail, in office, in commercial, and even in residential multifamily. So I think that there's going to be great opportunities, because when there's distress, there's opportunities. So we're not out of the woods yet. And people are starting to come back to work, but it's city by city. Look at Washington, D.C. You've got all those government buildings that are empty. So you got to pick and choose, know where you're going, and you'll do fine. The conversation around a startup to replace NAR is ludicrous. It's ridiculous to me. And so these are people who think that this is going to take off. They have no idea how difficult it is to do what NAR has done over the years. They have no idea how they're going to add value to people. You think that people are upset about paying NAR for whatever reason. They obviously don't know very much about what NAR does. And then you think somebody's going to come in and they're going to put money up to a new organization that has no track record. And so this conversation about forming an alternative group, to me, reeks of, don't take this too negatively, of arrogance and ignorance. And so I don't think it has a chance. And I think if you come back in a couple of years, you'll see that it doesn't have a chance. Convincing people to join an organization to pay their money, particularly when you have no track record, just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I've known lots of realtors for many, many years, and they're just not going to dole out money to some organization because they're not satisfied with the.
Sorry, we've got to bounce in from somewhere.
Well, I will tell you, I agree with Saul 100%, because one of the things that's out there is advocacy. And people are trying to highlight that, oh, we could get a meeting with a congressman. Well, you might get a meeting with somebody, but it doesn't mean you're going to move the needle in any possible way. The advocacy and the strength of all of the local, state, national associations are just so formidable. And Saul, they talked about creating a national MLS. I mean, that's just a pipe dream. That's not a chance of doing that, right?
Well, and it's not only is it a pipe dream, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
All real estate is local.
Right.
And local by local, market by market is where your opportunities lie.
Now, if you say national, should we have access to properties nationwide? We can do that without forming a national MLS. The technology is there, the data share capabilities are there. Real estate, believe it or not, is practiced a little bit different from one area to another. And if you think going to one centralized control of properties for sale in the country, you think that's going to be better, then you don't know a whole lot about listing and selling real estate.
Amen. God bless NAR, and let's keep waving that flag because it's a great organization. And from our standpoint, we just love the advocacy that NAR does to protect the 1031 like-kind exchange. Commercial real estate needs NAR to be successful. And when you got Shannon McGann, who's in charge of advocacy, she just couldn't be any better. And you have John Sebring, who's the CEO of the California Association of Realtors. I mean, you have some really high-level, high-quality people working for us day in and day out. And I just can't think enough of the people that work for us. Evan Lydiard in charge of tax and all these other people.
And just to bring it down to a hyper-local level for our listeners, and this at the lowest level and almost the most important level, it's a code of ethics, right? Subscribe to the code of ethics. There's an ethics board. There are people holding others to accountability on how they operate and the way in which they do their business, which you won't find in other countries. So,
so you mentioned code of ethics. You go back to the history of how NAR really got started. It was all about professionalism. And it was about fiduciary duties and how do you really become a professional, and that true professionals have fiduciary duties, and there was no license law. And so this group of people, and I think they were in the Chicago area where this all began, right? But the idea and to take on this concept of being a fiduciary to be a professional, which required a code of ethics. And now we know that not every person who's a member of the National Association of Realtors practices the best, it maintains the best ethical standards. That's the way it is with a lot of professions. But at the same time, it's baseline. And that fiduciary duty is very serious and something people need to take seriously if they understand buying and selling and have somebody to represent you and to have your interest be above their interest. There's huge value in this. And you're right, Andreas. In the rest of the world, they don't have it the way we have it. In most countries, they don't even have licensing. So the idea of licensing people to make them professionals to deal in buying and selling real estate for other people was a new concept here and taken to just a whole new level through our organizations, provided through something called the three-way agreement. And I know y'all are familiar with that. And that just makes it even more powerful. You can't just join one, you got to join all three. So when I join my local, I become a member of my state and I become a member of and that's huge power.
Huge.
Yeah.
So
you're totally right.
If you don't join, and this is over to Becca, if we're not joining, we're not showing up at conferences, how else can we get in front of and do as much or be as can we stand at that level or above without being a member of NAR? Do you have clients that aren't members? I
do. I have a number of clients that aren't members because of some of the guidelines and restrictions. And certainly many of my clients are owners, which has a different connotation to it. They're not representing anybody and doing third-party transactions. They're principals in a transaction.
But they still benefit from all the legislative work and the policy work that NAR is involved in. But go on. So
they do. They do.
The roads. They built us the roads. Sorry, Saul. That was my throwback to you.
No, think about this. If you're a property owner, who speaks up for private property rights? This is not about enough. Private property rights, the right to do what I want with my property within limits, to use the property the way I want to use the property. Who should be able to tell me that I shouldn't be able to do things with my property? And yet there's an attack on private property rights. People want to take away private property rights. And if you're a property owner, you don't have to belong to the National Association of Realtors to be able to benefit from the good work that the National Association of Realtors does. You're a beneficiary of all of this hard work and of all of the advocacy that takes place. So I've often said it throughout the years. I think that NAR, that Realtor Association, should create a membership category for property owners.
I think they should just keep hiring brokers, but I agree with that.
Well, I believe I know in Illinois and at the national level, a lot of our organizations are creating separate entities that are trying to have property owners to be a part of it so that they can reach out to them and let them know what's happening, because you are so right. We have these great staff people at the local, state, national level that are just the canaries in the coal mine to verify what's going on. And I'll just tell you an example from inland standpoint. We had the North Shore Barrington Association of Realtors, their government affairs director at the time was Howard Handler. And we were selling an apartment complex in I won't say the town, in a northern suburb of Chicago town. And the mayor, this was not a home rule community, the mayor believed that they needed to beautify the town. And the mayor was trying to hold inland up for $1 million worth of rose bushes for his town. And we went to this Howard Handler went to the recorder of deeds of Cook County and said, this is what the mayor of this small town is trying to do to this company that's a member of ours. And the recorder of deeds called the mayor and said, that's illegal. You're not able to do that. And so then within less than 24 hours, the sale was able to be completed, and they had to do the transfer of the property title because they were holding that up. And that's just one little example of what the Realtor Association can do for commercial real estate people. And at every level, you have these elected officials, and a lot of them are really good, but some people just consider us as piggy banks, and they just want to keep adding on and on and on to transfer taxes and everything else to pay for. And it ultimately hurts a community. And the Realtor is the boots on the ground who knows what's going on. They can get the information out there. And by having these organizations, it really helps benefit all of society. And we really have to do a better job as industry folks to wave that flag, because nobody else is waving that flag. We have to.
Well, and the same could be said, the associated builders and contractors, they're out there protecting the guys building the properties, right? We're out there doing them. There is an association in each of our sectors, respectively, and they do incredible things. I'll dumb it down to the lowest level. I teach continuing ed to different realtors all across Connecticut. And I love the look on their face when I say, hey guys, by the way, have you seen Realtor Property Resource? Here's this great dashboard, this tool that's comprehensive, that does site analysis as well as has listings and property data. And by the way, I want to thank you for paying for it all these years, because it's out of the dues that go to NAR. And they don't know. Some don't know. And they just go, huh? Just as an example. And Chris, I don't know what, I'm not as familiar with your group.
It's the same thing. I mean, quite frankly, any merit shop contractor for Connecticut chapter, we'll say, but any merit shop contractor in Connecticut who's not a member, every time we go to bat for those contractors, and we're lobbying on behalf of the industry, on behalf of those particular contractors or that sector of contractors, which new studies just were released. Basically, merit shop contractors make up about 89% of the industry at this point. That are not signatory. So I bump into people all the time that I bump into people sometimes during my meetings. They say, well, why do we need to get involved? You're going to be doing this anyway. And my answer to that is, my first part is, yeah, you're right, we are, and we have been, and you're welcome. And but to be honest with you, we're talking 22,000 members across the country. We're the largest one out there. I don't spend a lot of time with those contractors, to be honest with you, because, it's just one of those things where it's like, you're collecting on what other members are paying for. So as a membership guy, it's tough for me not to take that personal sometimes, but we run into it all the time. And then we have, we also allow, members, companies that aren't members call for information or for help all the time. And we still step up and do what we can for them, especially at my president's level. And because at the end of the day, if we're fighting for one, we're fighting for all. And that's not going to change whether they're members or not. But again, as a membership person who handles membership directly, that it tends to get me going quite a bit. But
you can lead a horse to water, but can't make it drink. At the end of the day, you are who you're with, and it can only help you.
If you remain strong and you keep growing and you keep retaining, and like I said, Andreas, you've been to one of our events. When you get in a room, and I'm sure it's no different. My favorite part about the beginning of this conversation was learning about everyone's conferences, because the conferences, I will be at the Connecticut Groundskeepers Association thing, event coming up. I'll be at the Hardscape Expo, the New York Build, the ABC National Convention. It's so interesting to hear about everyone's sectors and every event that they're going to, because eventually I'll get to a point where I'll be at some of the same events that you all go to. But it's so great to pull people into everyone's world to kind of know where these things are going. Because when you do get in the room and you're with those people, it doesn't matter what the event is, if it's standing for, something that is worth standing for, you could feel that energy, and all of a sudden you kind of realize, like, wow, this is different. And I say that coming from a space where before I got involved with Associate Builders and Contractors, I knew nothing about it. Literally not one thing about it. And then I learned, and it's been 5.5 years, and I love it. And I learn every single day. And, you ask it, I bump into a member, I say, is there anything we could do for you, or what's going on? Any issues? And there's that small part of me that is, oh boy, what am I going to get hit with? And, but they appreciate it. And then you digest the problem and you do your best to find a solution. And then you're able to be proud of the work that you do, just like Dan was saying in regards to the situation with the rosebush stick up, and being able to say, that's not right, that's illegal, that's unethical. You can't just run around and do whatever, can't. And like what Saul was saying, you can't. This is my property. This is what I want to do to it. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's one of my favorite parts about getting together every 4 weeks or so with the group.
It's events all day and every day. If we can go, when we gotta go do business.
Yeah.
Well,
So I did want to jump in here, because I do think that as coordinators and board members of various associations, we have this great opportunity to elevate those associations, to really create that credibility and respect, because there are entities that either by choice or by nature that individuals can't get membership without their managing broker having membership. And if the managing broker has membership, everybody who's licensed under that managing broker has to have membership. There's some restrictions around that, but those don't prevent us from being incredibly impactful and finding other ways for growth for groups who may or may not be able to become members of our associations, but can still get involved, right? There are sponsorship opportunities. We do tons of events that are open to everybody. I'm the past president of the Northern Illinois Commercial Association of Realtors. I've been on the board for 8 years, and our recognition that many of our potential members are not going to be able to become members, and instead to open wide the gates of our programming, charge a little bit more, make sure that they know what RPAC is, which is our Political Action Committee contribution arm, make sure they know of the value that NICAR provides. And so they're still able to support it financially in various ways without having to become a member. So we've tried to be very creative and intentional with elevating our credibility and respect in the marketplace, regardless of whether they're going to be able to join with us as official members. And I think it has really impacted our suburban area here in Chicago. And it is really exciting to watch. I was at the Illinois Realtors meetings last week for 2 days. Tons of learning there, all sorts of interesting pieces. And what I heard over and over again is how great it is for NICAR to be there, to be involved. The state's recognizing it. Our leadership is going to the national conferences and state conferences because we want commercial to have a voice. And as long as we were silent and pretending that there was this separation between residential and commercial real estate and only focusing on the commercial element without drawing in the residential conversations, without drawing in the external conversations, as long as we pigeonholed and siloed ourselves, we depleted our own impact. Now we're seeing it blossom and grow.
Great job. Great job.
And not that resi-mercial is a dirty word, but we should be learning from both sides of the fence, right? Specialization being key. Heart surgeons do heart surgery, brain surgeons do brain surgery. But we can learn from each other. We can grow together, to your point. But if you're residential, refer out the commercial. It's my 2 cents. And Saul, as far as where you now sit over there in San Diego, what's your take on the blending of it all?
I've always been an advocate that the real estate industry is more than the sale of residential property. And so I've always encouraged it because you belong to the local association of realtors. Primarily, it's residential agents.
There are more of them, absolutely.
Right. And so the way my real estate career, I started selling houses and condominiums, but I kind of saw that as an entry level. I wanted to do other things. And so I thought, wow, multifamily, that makes sense. Yeah, resi-mercial, right? I can learn about profit and loss and vacancy and expense. I can learn about that. Heck. And so then I started selling multifamily. And then I think throughout your career, if you sell real estate, and you do it for a while, you'll run into 4 or 5 people. I call them career-making clients. That you only need like one kind of client like that, and that makes your whole career. They'll provide you with enough business and they just make your whole career for you. Well, I've had like 5 or 6 of those over my career. And I found one group of people and this kind of relates to something you said, Dan, about Mr. Goodwin. And I found this group of people that raised money through tax preparers to put together real estate limited partnerships so that they could get people invested in property. Now, and you talked about integrity and ethics and Mr. Goodwin, they had an issue. It wasn't because of the limited partnerships. It was because of what happened to the assets within the limited partnership.
Right.
They still make a lot of sense and they're good. Right. For people. It's just a limited partnership is one way to own property in a group. And there are numerous ways to own property in a group. So Mr. Goodwin was right on track. He was involved in one of those things, taking numbers of people and putting them together and letting them all share in the ownership of real property, which is the only true wealth building tool, if you think about it, for most people. So limited partnerships are great. Now, I knew in the 80s people that did that, and then they got involved. It was the wrong place at the wrong time. They bought properties in oil patch areas. And when they couldn't rent the properties out and they didn't have the reserves, then the properties went to foreclosure. And so people lost money. And what Mr. Goodwin did is he found ways to salvage those investments for those people. And it wasn't the vehicle that was wrong.
Right.
The investments based on the economy. And then he found another vehicle or other vehicles and was able to transfer assets and did just a tremendous thing. And that goes back to ethics and values. So you get those I had a group of clients that were like that. They were made my career. If I'd have just stuck with them, if they would have been my only client, that would have been phenomenal. But I was lucky enough to have a number of them over the years. And so typically, if you stay in this long enough, you're going to want to move out of residential sales and into other areas. And it takes more training though, Andreas. It's not just something you automatically do, but you can train and you can learn and you can get designations. And, my favorite NAR designation really, and I don't hold it, is CCIM. And
people
that designation, you know, these are serious people. They're good at what they do. They've taken a lot of courses and they're very, very, for the most part, at least the ones I've met, very competent people.
Yeah. Well, that's baselines, right? So the baseline at NAR is here, CCIM is here, SIOR is here, and so on. Anytime I see CCIM next to someone's name, I know that the expectation of their marketing, of their materials, of everything is all the way up here, because they've done that training. That's specialization, which goes back to the don't dabble in both, specialize, pick one.
The Realtors Land Institute has a similar thing. Those are the farm brokers, and they have a similar designation like CCIM does as well. And so, Saul, you're absolutely right. Becca, are you a CCIM?
I am not. I've considered pursuing
Are
the
you?
coursework.
Well, that costs another $15,000, doesn't it?
It does. It does. I have a client that's an instructor, actually. It was really fun building his presentation and building his course. So for pitching, they have to try out. They have to audition to become an instructor. And so he came to Chicago and we met downtown after working for a couple of weeks on his pitch presentation. And it was really a fascinating process to watch. But he's so knowledgeable and he's been in commercial real estate for decades. Understanding the caliber of instructor that they require also is impressive to me.
Good point. Good point. Well, it's interesting with I was just at the Real Estate Roundtable, and these are the owners of REITs and I mean just massive big companies, and I always just marvel at how they're so smart. They recognize the power of the National Association of Realtors and how the connections that we have across the country with these different elected officials. We were, and I wanted to bring this up to everybody, the 2025 is going to be redoing tax reform. All the SALT and issue that came up with deductibility of your mortgage interest. You have the 1031 will be coming up. Everything in tax is going to be coming up in 2025. So 2024 election is absolutely vital for everybody to be aware of, and who's going to be at the top of the ticket. And I mean, whatever your beliefs are, but just recognize we have to get engaged and involved, because this election is going to be very, very paramount for tax, and taxes like everything for real estate. So when you have an organization like the National Association of Realtors, where you have a realtor attached to every member of Congress, the big commercial companies recognize the power of that, because those big commercial companies, while they have buildings in, the Speaker of the House's district or whatever, the people that matter the most are that very grassroots local realtor that is boots on the ground in that member's district, who happened to maybe run their campaign or volunteered for their campaign, and that kind of hyper close to elected officials, Democrats, Republicans. That is really the secret sauce of NAR, and that secret sauce has helped all of our industry, no matter if you're a really big commercial or not. That's the everything. So the tax reform is a really, really big deal. We have the Real Estate Roundtable, the Federation of Exchange Accommodators, the qualified intermediaries went to the White House to say, hey, President Biden, the 1031 isn't a bad thing, and we don't know why you keep trying to take it out, get rid of it. And they were trying to educate President Biden's staff about the importance of it. And I think they started making headway when they talked about having to repurpose buildings, repurposing office, repurposing buildings that values have gone down, and that people are just handing these buildings back to the bank. One of the ways that you don't do that is by, if you're doing a 1031 and someone's able to sell and 1031 into something else. I mean, that's the whole liquidity of the market, and it keeps things really oiled well to keep it going. And you could have people, repurposing the office into condos and or whatever you want. But that is, I can't overemphasize the importance of all this. The opportunity zones are coming up again. Will we get those again or not is going to be dependent upon the election. We had Senator Ron Wyden, who is the chair of the Finance Committee of the Senate, very, very, very powerful. He said his biggest issue is he wants to make sure to have all affordable housing is his big issue. And I brought up the 1031 and other commercial ideas, and he just kind of smiled. And I mean, that clearly is not his big issue. So So it's incumbent upon all of us to vote, to educate ourselves, and to get engaged. And as Becca said, that RPAC is so powerful, and we all, we all just need to make sure to be a part of NAR and our state and local associations. And I know, Chris, I'm sure you see with the what the power of elections, what happens if somebody doesn't get in there. And gosh, Saul, you have so many issues in California with your elected officials. I don't know where you'd begin to talk about your elected officials.
And before we jump down that rabbit hole, for those tuning in, opportunity zones are economic development tools that allow people to invest in distressed areas, right? Just like the 1031 allows people to sell off an asset and move on to another asset. It keeps the money moving in the machine, as opposed to a farmer who can't sell it because when his parents bought it, it was worth $20,000. And if he sells it worth $1 million, he gives what? I don't know, $500,000 to the government.
Well, and in my opinion, Andreas, one of the things that's true is that I think a 1031 is perfect for a DST 1031. It's again, all depends on evaluating your portfolio, but usually that's a great thing for real estate, the 1031. What the opportunity zone really helps people at is when they have the capital gain on a stock buyback or dealing with stocks and bonds and those kind of transactions, and that's where you can really have an impact to be able to get a tax benefit where you're putting money into an area that's underserved, and the only way that area is going to be redeveloped is through an opportunity zone. And then there's a lot of very detailed parts of the opportunity zone legislation, but ultimately you have the ability to possibly have a certain amount of your capital gains wiped away because you're investing in a very important area that would never get any type of investment. So it's really impacting positively communities, and we really need this opportunity zone legislation to be redone. But I know, Saul, you guys with the California Association are battling rent control, and I'm sure there's what's the latest crazy thing out there?
Well, rent control is crazy enough, isn't it? but then we have in San Diego where you can't you can give a tenant notice, but they don't have to move, or you have to pay them 3 months worth of rent to ask them to move, and so it's like crazy. It's destructive. And I think, and the problem is people just don't understand what it takes to own property, and that many of the people that own are moms and pops, and it's their retirement. And so, California, we've got issues, but what starts in California typically spreads across the country. So get ready. But you kind of put the instructor out of me, because we talk about 1031, and we often do this, right? We assume everybody understands what we understand.
Good point.
So a lot of people, the 1031 is a section of the Internal Revenue Code. It's IRC, Internal Revenue Code section 1031, and it allows for the deferral of capital gain on the property, on the capital gain, on the money you made in the property, provided you follow the rules. And so if you follow the rules, because the government said, it's in the best interest of everybody if we can keep people's money invested in real estate. So we want to give people the incentive to keep their money invested in real estate because it benefits our society and it benefits everyone. So let's give them a break. Let's say, if you own an income-producing property or a potentially income-producing property and you want to sell it, if you don't take the money out, if you don't take the equity out and you buy another property of equal or greater value, and you go, we say up in equity, up in value, up in loan. If you follow these rules, then all of the profits that you made in that first property, you don't have to pay tax on. It's like an interest-free loan from the government. Yeah, you still owe the money. You're going to pay it at some point in time, but you get to keep it in the meantime. You get to buy a bigger asset, probably an asset that'll grow in value more, and you can just keep rolling from one property to another using the government's money to help you build wealth. And so it's an incredible wealth building tool that people just don't realize if it went away, the consequences that there would be.
And Saul, you're completely right. And what I love to explain to the staff, the 22-year-old staff member of a congressman or woman, is that the 1031 is exactly like a 401k of real estate. And as soon as you explain a 401k is where you can put pre-tax dollars in, and it can grow and grow and grow, and then when you take it out is when you pay the tax on it. That clicks with them. They understand it when you explain it like that, because that's how for 100 years it's been in the tax code, and that's how people have gotten wealthy in America, is from that. But you wouldn't have, farmers wouldn't ever sell land if they didn't have 1031. There's so many aspects of this that we could go on and on. Conservation groups would never be able to get farmers to sell them land for conservation if not for the 1031. You wouldn't have underserved areas be able to be redeveloped if not for the 1031. There's so many aspects of this thing. It's unbelievable.
Right. Without the 1031, the only thing that's left is eminent domain when the property becomes so bad that the city forces them to sell it, basically.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
No jobs and no reason to improve the property. So it's a key cog in the overall machine. And here we are at almost at the top of the hour. What an hour this was.
I can't believe it. It seems like we just started.
And truly what an hour. And what a month. We're now in February. Everything is more in 24. Throwback to Becca's statement last month. It was the headline of a bunch of emails. It did work well. Everything is growing and moving. People seem positive all around. The whole group's positive. Let's move to part 3 of the show. What is the one big thing you want to give to the audience, to the industry, as we move around the group from your sector? Becca, you're to the right. What's your one big takeaway? And Saul, I was going to ask you to use your car wash as an example for the 1031 and for capital gains. So if that's the takeaway, you can go there, but it's up to you. Becca, you're up.
So the takeaway that I have this month is when you see all of these opportunities to get involved and to attend events, consider actually going. Get out there. Everyone else is out there. It'll start looking funny that you're not there. You got to move. You got to go. So make sure that you're participating. Make sure you're getting involved. Make sure that you're curious and learning at all of these events, and expand your network, because there are great things to come this year.
And Dan, you're to Becca's right. What's the one big piece of advice you would give the industry?
I think the most important thing is stay engaged and involved with your national, local, and state associations, and that everything is about the 2024 election. I can't overemphasize. Get registered to vote. Get people to vote. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican. As we call it, the Realtor Party. We want to make sure that people who get elected protect private property rights. There's crazy Democrats, there's crazy Republicans, there's crazy independents. And our job as professionals in this industry is that we have to stand on the shoulders of all the professionals who come before us, who've done such a great job to educate these elected officials to say, this is what will happen with your, you don't know about this issue. And I can't emphasize that enough, because if it's not us doing it, then there won't be anybody else doing it, because everybody can think of a way to spend money, and they want to spend your money, and you want to make sure to protect your money and private property rights.
Private property rights. All right. Chris Abel, construction side.
I'll keep it really, really simple, to kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Dan and what Becca were saying. Kind of go back to just 2 ears, 1 mouth. Just keep listening to what people have to say. It's the best way to learn. The only way to figure out if someone has a problem that you might be able to be the solution for, or provide some sort of resource for, is to actually listen to what they're saying, listen to what's going on. The more you're out there talking with people, the more opportunities you have to actually listen and converse. And people are there. It's high energy right now. People have a lot to say. People have a lot to want to talk about, whether it has to do with the election, whether it has to do with their, their businesses, whether it has to do with their personal life, which I'm a firm believer of, kind of the personal side first, kind of get to know them that way a little bit, as much as someone wants to talk about. And then you start finding those connections, and then people start opening up, telling you about their problems, telling you about what their issues are within their businesses. And then you could decide if you can either A, be a solution or provide some sort of resource. And all of that will fall back to your personal brand and who you are as a person, and what you stand for as a human being. And then the reputation kind of takes on kind of a life of its own. So pretty simple. There's a lot more going on right now, which means there's a lot more conversations to be had. And listening to those conversations are probably, probably that's, I say it's number one on my book.
Listening to conversations. And I'm going to come back to that point in just a second after Saul gives his big tip to the industry. Saul.
Buy real estate.
All right, no, that's my tip.
No.
The other tip is join the San Diego MLS.
That was a mic drop moment.
Buy real estate. If you can't buy the whole piece, buy a part. Back to this idea of a limited partnership. But or a REIT, or there are different ways to own real estate, but buy real estate. Figure out ways to own real estate. If not this year, next year. There's not anybody that I know that says, I wish I bought less real estate in 1993. And so we all wish that we had bought more real estate in the past, not less real estate. That's the way it's going to be in the future. Figure out a way to buy real estate. Then to Dan's point, learn about ways you can multiply those investments. Learn about the Internal Revenue Code Section 1031. To take the car wash example, we bought a house. We lived in it, me and another guy, because I couldn't afford to do it by myself. And then after a year, it had gone up in value. So we sold a third of it to another guy. The three of us, we lived in it for a while. Then we bought a second house together, the three of us. And then we made the first house a rental. And then we traded the equity in that because it kept going up in value. We had to add a little cash. And we traded that into the car wash, tax deferred appreciation that we were able to realize because of 1031. And it's like for like, but like for like doesn't mean house for a house. It could be a house for an apartment building, real property for real property, like for like. So buy real estate, buy it in pieces if that's what you have to do. Take advantage of the rules that are on the books, the tax code that wants you to build wealth. That's why these are not loopholes. These are intentionally placed in the code to allow you to build wealth.
And how young were you when you bought the car wash? How young is too young to buy real estate?
It was 1979 when I bought that. I bought the house before that in 1975. So I guess I was 26. I'm going to be 75 next month.
Well, I don't believe that for a minute. But so it's never too young you're never too young to buy real estate, and you should buy as much real estate as possible.
Keep buying. I wish I kept sold.
So, from my side, I heard the word listen 3 or 4 times. Well, 3 times just here now at this last part of our show. And I was reading through the Realtor's statistics report the other day, and 94% of Realtors prefer to communicate via text, which troubles me because I despise texting. I also said Twitter was for people that can't write and Instagram's for people that can't read. That's where my audience is, and that's where my clients are. So I've used those things. But get on the phone and call someone and cut through the noise. The amount of information you glean from a phone call, let alone, it being the proper thing to do, is priceless. That's how deals get done or deals don't get done. You cannot negotiate a deal via text. And for the love of God, if another person chat GPTs me an answer to a question via text, especially in negotiation, we're never doing a deal again.
Hey, Andreas, can I do a point of personal privilege?
Yes.
I just want to thank you all again for having the remembrance of Mr. Goodwin. And obviously, we pray for Reagan's sister that passed away too. And just it really is part of our family here. And I can't thank you enough for highlighting Mr. Goodwin. He's my second dad and has been a lot to our 1,000 inland employees and a whole lot to my family. So thank you so much.
The world over. And to the audience, Mr. Goodwin has appeared more times in my results on my social medias spanning the country in all different sectors. He has appeared more times than anyone I've ever met, as he should, for what he's done and contributed.
Thank
So
you.
that being said, I want to thank our audience, our listeners, 3,000 tune-ins, downloads every month. We continue to grow. Tune in anywhere you get your audio and your video on every social media channel. Please do rate and review us. It really does help. And speaking of listening and attending, don't miss CRETech London coming up. Use our code CRECollab20 for 20% off. Join us in London for the latest and greatest in innovation, climate tech, and so on. If you miss London, join us in New York later this year. And at the other shows everyone else just mentioned. Thank you again for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing everyone next month. Have a great one.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Roundtable, powered by CRECo.ai, your source for the latest in real estate and technology. For past episodes, sector interviews, and more great content, follow us on all social media and YouTube at CRECollaborative. You can also find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and share. It really does help. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next Real Estate Roundtable.